I'd like to call the December 27th, 2023 special call council meeting for the city of Lake City to order. If everyone to stand for the pledge of allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to gather, conduct the business of our community. We ask for your guidance and that what we do is pleasing in your eyes and for the betterment of our community. Look after our community, our first responders, and our troops. In your name we pray. Amen. Ms. Osh, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Jernigan?
Here.
Mr. Hill?
Here.
Ms. Young? Here. Mr. Sampson?
Here.
Mayor Wood?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Kennon?
Here.
Chief Miles?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Lake City Council has opened this public meeting since 1968. The city code has prohibited any person from making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or becoming boisterous while addressing the city council. Yelling or making audible comments from the audience constitutes boisterous conduct. Such conduct will not be tolerated. There's only one approved manner of addressing the council, that's to be recognized and to speak from the podium. As a reminder, persons are not to openly carry a handgun or carry a concealed weapon or firearm while the governing body is meeting. First item is
Mr. Mayor, excuse me for interrupting. If someone come to the approach the podium and they become boisterous, and carrying a handgun or just yelling and screaming or whatever you may call it, what happens to that person or persons? It will be removed. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, approval of the agenda.
Motion for approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the agenda as published. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this is public participation. I have a couple. Mr. Warren?
I'm gonna skip past for a second. I want Mr. Bowden to go before me if you don't mind.
All right, Mr. Bowden?
Mayor, Council, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I want to play the recording back from your last meeting, but let me just go straight to the chase. On December 18th, Mr. Warren stood at this podium. After you had read this, whatever you read every time, and Mr. Jernigan assured Mr. Jernigan the person will be removed. This council cannot become the peace police. You understand what I'm saying? Who gonna decide what's boisterous? Who gonna decide if you're yelling? If I start talking loud, you'll put me out the meeting? Come on, man. This is not right. What y'all did to Mr. Warren at the last meeting was unfair, unjust, and unnecessary. You retaliated against him because you're upset with what he do on Facebook or what he do on social media. At the last meeting, I play it back for you. You think I'm lying? Mr. Warren did not say not one thing at the last meeting that was insulting. He didn't call nobody's name. He didn't call nobody. He didn't curse. He wasn't even loud. Mr. Jernigan make a motion, Mr. Sampson seconded, and you said call the roll. You don't even call for discussion. It's almost like it was a plan. Like y'all went to some meeting, oh yeah, we got what to do it now. We get back to the next meeting, make a motion, you second it, put him out. It's telling them out what the people did to Dollar King and went to Birmingham, Alabama. Bull Connor said, if you get that bullhorn, lock him up. You cannot become the police. I'm upset by this, man, because I'm an activist. In 1980, in the 80s and the 90s, I used to stand at the podium like this, the school boards, county commission, city council. Arguing that like Mr. Warren be arguing. And people try to do the same thing to me. If you silence Mr. Warren, you silence me. You silencing the voice for the people. He don't speak for me, but he speaks for the community. If you try to silence him because you don't like what he's saying, that's wrong. At the last meeting, tell me, each one of y'all, what did he say at the last meeting that violated what you just read?
There was personal attacks against Mr. Jernigan.
What he said?
I don't remember verbatim.
I signed it for the comments. I expect you to put the comments in the tape. Well, I ain't gonna play it back. Well, I'll tell you exactly what he said. He said something about, what I said about coming to District 10, I meant that. Where you was born at and where your mama lived at, or whatever he said. Mr. Junker made the motion after that. There was an assumption made that Mr. Warren was talking about somebody. He didn't say anything about Mr. Junker.
Okay, well, let's talk about the issues tonight.
Well, no, I got to put the comments now. You're going to tell me what to talk about. You can't tell me what to talk about. That's the problem. This public comment, I'm not cursing, I'm not using a fan, I'm making a point. Now, what y'all did, Mr. Warren, last meeting, the community, you ought to be apologize to the community. You don't wanna apologize to him. You shouldn't have put that man out on meeting, man. Public comment. You denied him an opportunity to speak to other issues on the agenda because you don't like what he's saying on social media. That's not right. That's not fair. What you did to him, you did it to me. And I'm insulted by it. And that goes for everybody sitting up there. I don't like that. I resent it. Bitterly resent it.
Okay, Mr. Warren?
Mr. Mayor and council, be extremely clear. Mayor, you've been attorney for a long time, and your city attorney, you know, he practiced family law and child support. But ain't nobody crazy, and you know that my civil rights, as far as my freedom of speech, was violated in the manner in which you all did that, Mayor. And it ain't fair, it ain't right. Now, let me say this, Mr. Jernigan. No matter what I say on Facebook or how you feel about me, tell you something, you sit in that seat because of me. You ran for 16 years.
Okay, but
You,
Mr. Warren,
I'm not making no personal comments. This is a fact. He ran for 16 years and could not get elected until I put my hands into the race. That's a fact. Jake Hill, Councilman Hill, you only sit there because of my influence and my help. The good old boy system ran no Walker against you, and your own community was against you. Unity Day is because of me. I've done nothing but supported you and have your back 100%. And every time I have your back, you make it your business for some odd reason for whomever to stab me in the back. Mr. Sampson would not be a city council member if it was not for me, Vanessa, and Linda Gale Caldwell. Period. That's why you're sewing. If you go back and look at the pictures, he hung around the black community every day until he was elected, until the Roberts came up here and started bickering with me about issues. And then he switched his stance with me and the folks who got him elected. Now, when you get to Councilwoman Young, nobody even knew who Councilwoman Young was. People just voted for her because I told them to. And then what makes it so bad is when I was pushing for her, Mr. Jernigan, if you remember, correct me if I'm wrong, because you said that if I tell you a mosquito can pull a truck, you will believe it. Have that what you told me? Because you know I shoot straight. Then you told me that ain't nowhere in the world Chevelle live here that long. She ain't even from here. She can't live. I said, she's been living here about 30 years. You said, cuz, ain't no way, I don't know her. She don't live here. And I've had to prove to you that she lived here that long. And you're the only reason that Chevelle Young, you sit in that seat, nobody don't even know you politically. It's the only reason that you sit in that seat in District 10 is because I told the folks at District 10 to elect you. None of y'all would be up here if it wasn't for me. And so I'm gonna tell you this, y'all made a motion, and ain't none of y'all man enough to fix the motion y'all made. But when I make my motion, don't come calling and crying for mercy and forgiveness and everything else, because I'm gonna make a motion. I am going to make a motion. And just remember what motion you made against me. I gave you the team that you asked me for, Jake. I gave you the team that you asked me for. And you gonna go against me and not defend me. And how many times I defended you?
okay, time to,
Mr. Mayor, if I say something. Mr. Warren, you keep, saying that you gave me this team. Mr. Warren, the only thing I asked you to do was come to the council meeting. That's the only thing I ever asked you to do.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure about that. Yes, I'm sure about that.
So you're telling me the only thing you've ever asked me to do is come to the council meeting?
When I was in this, well, me and Mr. Jefferson was up here. I used to see you, Sylvester, come to the meetings. Come to the meetings. Now, you talking about a team? I don't know about a team now.
So that's your position?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's now you know that these phones don't lie. Now you know if a federal investigation go down and I turn over my phone, then you know none of y'all ain't gonna survive. I mean, Jake. So
Well,
I mean, I don't
I'm gonna take my chances, Sylvester, because I don't know what you talking about.
I don't want to go there with you. I don't wanna go there with you, but when I make my motion, Jake, I'm telling you, y'all made a bad choice in trying to treat me this way.
Well, let me ask you this here, Sylvester, let me ask you this question, and I'll be through with it, man.
Okay.
I told you this before, we can agree to disagree. We can't agree to disagree, but in your eyes, whatever you say, your word is gospel. No, it don't work like that.
No, it don't work like that for you. You don't get a chance to misuse people and then
I
have
don't
it
think I
your way.
misuse nobody.
And then have it your way.
I think my way is the right way. That's what I feel is the right way. If I do something wrong, I can stand
So you don't think what you did wrong? You don't think you voting to kick back to me was right? You think that was right? Man to man. I'm talking, man, forget all these people. Man, I've been rocking with you from day one. I'm talking about man to man. You think what you all did to me was right?
Well, if you want to do that, Sylvester, do you think you calling me what call the three of us what you call us? You think that's right?
I called you that on social media.
Well, you still talking
I called
to
you
me.
that on social media.
But you talking to me.
I
You
called
didn't
you
tell
that
me
on social media. So you're taking out on social media, like Mr. Bowder said, in this council meeting, which is wrong. You should know
what
if you got a
you
problem
said
with me,
about us
come by my
was
house like you normally do.
What
You
you
normally
said
come to my
about
house.
What you said about us, Sylvester, was wrong.
No, the way y'all treat me is wrong. Me fighting for this community, the way y'all say what now?
Alright,
So this is the route we're going, Jake. I'm telling you, I'm asking you now. You gonna make this route we're going?
No, this is right you taking, Sylvester. This is what you trying to do.
okay, let's.
You gave me permission to go ahead and do what I need to do.
Okay, thank you. Anthony Newton.
Good evening. My name is Anthony Newton. I've taken an absence for coming to the meetings, but I've watched every meeting that you've had. And normally when I come to this podium, I talk about process and making sure we do things the right way. And I am disturbed with what I witnessed last week, more so for the reason that the process was wrong. The board cannot vote to remove anybody per parliamentary procedure. A member of the hall can only be removed by the chair. So the action itself by parliamentary procedure was incorrect. It bothers me that the attorney who serves as the parliamentarian didn't catch that the action, according to Robert's Rules of Orders, is illegal. You cannot vote a member of the hall out because the chair has to remove them. That leans on some of the things I've witnessed in the meeting when it comes to the way we make motions. It is improper parliamentary procedure to say, I make a motion, then follow that up with your discussion and then ask for a second. In parliamentary procedure, the proper language is, I move, and you move the action into action with a second and call for discussion. I'm of the opinion that a good attorney could take you to task for every motion that's been made because it's been worded and done incorrectly. Because you cannot say, I make a motion and then have your discussion. And in that, there's been a lot of things. You can't pick up a subject that you moved on and then have a 45-minute discussion about something that you've already acted on. It goes against parliamentary procedure, even on wait time, that you can pick up that discussion. And so I'm just asking that maybe when you're talking on your town hall meetings or your workshops, that there needs to be a workshop on parliamentary procedure, because we focus so much on decorum that the decorum from the dais legally is incorrect because the charter governs by parliamentary procedure and it is not being followed. And so we can't be adamant about one thing and not adamant about all of it. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we have for public comments. Now we'll get into our quasi-judicial proceedings. Ms. Kennedy, do you want to say anything at this time before we start this?
No, if you'll just follow that, I'll pipe in when needed.
Thank you. All right, appeal of decision of Historic Preservation Agency's issuance of a certificate of appropriateness as to COA 2331 submitted by Rocky Ford as owner, requesting a certificate of appropriateness in a residential single-family 3 or SF3 zoning district as established in section 4.5 of the Land Development Regulations and located within the viewshed of the Lake Isabella Historic District, established in section 10.0 11.2 of the land development regulations on property described as City of Lake City parcel 13319-000. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. Discussion by council members as of ex parte communications.
I can go over that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Florida statute section 286.0115 provides that any person who is not otherwise prohibited by statute, charter provision, or ordinance may discuss with any commissioner the merits of any matter that the city council may take action. Following procedures which remove the presumption of prejudice shall be followed for ex parte communication. The substance of any ex parte communication to the council member which relates to a quasi-judicial action pending before the council is not presumed prejudicial to the action if the subject of the communication and the identity of the person, group, or entity with whom the communication took place is disclosed and made a part of the record before the final action on the matter. A city council member may read written communication from any person. A written communication that relates to quasi-judicial action pending before the council shall not be presumed prejudicial to the action. Such written communication shall be made part of the record before final action on the matter. Council members may conduct investigations and site visits and may receive expert opinions regarding quasi-judicial actions pending before the council. Such activity shall not be presumed prejudicial to the action if the existence of the investigation, site visit, or expert opinion is made a part of the record before final action on the matter. At this time, I would ask if any council member has had ex parte communications that they would like to disclose at this time.
At this time, attorney and mayor and everyone who is here are participating or in this meeting tonight. I would like to say, Chevelle Young, I attended the meeting on October 17th, and this meeting was the historic preservation meeting. I participated in that meeting, made some comments that might be construed as being negative and might be viewed as unfair or partial. And for that reason, I find that it would be of my best interest to recuse myself of voting on this item.
okay. Mr. Sampson, you got anything to add?
I've received ex parte communication with a couple of individuals. Barbara Limmerly on December 1st, we spoke. I'm not prejudiced by that conversation. And also I received a text message from a number, I do not know who it was, that stated, hold on. The number's 386-361-1555. It says, I believe we should not allow manufactured homes close to the historic section of our town. In addition to that, we received several emails that I think were addressed to council. I don't know, I didn't list those out separately, but those should be disclosed as well, I believe. Is that correct, attorney?
Yes, sir.
So there's other emails that went, I believe, to the entire council. I don't know if there's a packet containing those, but those should be disclosed as well.
Okay. As far as me, I drive by there at least once or more a day because it's just on the way where I go. A lot of the people involved in this I have spoke to in the last few months, but nothing about this issue. I have not discussed any of the pros, cons, or their opinion of it.
I haven't spoken to anyone about it.
Okay. Johnny?
Yeah, I just read over the different things that I read over in the packet, and that was about it. And I have those things right here in front of me right now, exhibits and things like that, so.
Okay. At this time, we'll swear in any of the applicant, appellant, staff, all witnesses collectively by the clerk. Any individual who plans to testify on this matter, please stand at this time and raise your right hand. The clerk will swear you in at this time. And Ms. Sykes, will you please repeat those?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Mr. Warren, were you gonna speak on this issue?
Yes, sir. Oh, you ready for me to speak on this issue?
No.
Oh, you want me to do my whole thing?
No, you need to swear or affirm. If you don't wanna swear, you can affirm.
Yeah,
You have to take those,
Yeah,
okay?
I'm pleased, I'm swear, you know, I'm all in.
Okay. All right. Should I ask for exhibits at this time?
Yes, please.
Okay, if there's any exhibits that anybody intends to use, if they would bring them forth and give them to the clerk so she can mark them. Anybody have, yeah, if you want to come forward.
It's on my cell phone, does that count as an exhibit?
How you gonna?
Not unless it can be presented to the council. I mean, you can read it into the record at the appropriate time.
It's
But-
just the treatment guidelines, part 1, preservation and rehabilitation, National Register of Historic Places that's published online.
And she's gonna read it into the record.
If she wishes to.
Okay, so that'll work. All right,
And then we'll let the city staff place their discussion.
Can you,
Yeah, city staff can present theirs when they make their presentation.
okay, at this time, the appellants will do their presentation. And it's my understanding that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 appellants: Vicki Lang, Brenda Douglas, Stephen Layton, Patricia K. Trimble, and Nancy Wozniak. And Ms. Lang, do you want to speak? Yeah. Ms. Lang, did you want? Okay, next is Brenda Douglas. No, he said on the applicants, they get what time they need, but, public. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm not gonna read the whole appeal, because hopefully you guys have had a chance to go over your packet. It did deal with the appropriateness, quote unquote, of the original September 12th meeting of the Historic Preservation Agency, where no public notice was given, and I understand that the attorney has informed me at the last meeting that certain conditions were met, but my feelings are that that doesn't change the fact that no public notice was ever given of the first meeting of the Historic Preservation Agency on this subject, which was back in September. No public notice was posted. No public notice was given to the residents of the area that live within, 300 feet, 300 yards, whatever the case may be. None of those procedures were followed properly, and that doesn't change. Despite the fact that conditions may have been met later, we were not given an opportunity to come to that meeting and to speak as to the neighborhood and the residents' feelings on that subject. The other thing is, in past meetings of the Historic Preservation Agency, somebody, and I don't recall who, mentioned that there are other mobile homes within the historic district. And I have driven all 30 some odd blocks of the historic district, from Duval Street to Columbia from Church to Baya. And there are no mobile homes within those 30 some odd blocks. The other thing, a point I'd like to make is that we have guidelines, federal, state of Florida, and our own local guidelines for the treatment of historic preservation areas. Any structure that is within that district, any new structure within those district boundaries, must meet the federal, state, and local guidelines for treatment of an historic preservation area. The mobile homes that Mr. Ford is proposing do not meet any of those guidelines. We proposed at a previous Historic Preservation Agency meeting that the mobile homes could be made to resemble and to fit into the character of the neighborhood. He had no interest in that. We proposed that if you put a better home, whether it be site-built or mobile home, if you put a better home on a property, you can sell it for more money. He has no interest in that. He has no interest in complying, nor did the Historic Preservation Agency have any interest in complying with any of the guidelines that govern an historic district. And I just ask that you all please take that into consideration when you vote. Thank you very much.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yes.
Mr. Ford, I believe you have a chance to cross-examine her, is that correct, Mr. Cannon?
Mr. Ford or city staff if they so desire.
Sure.
You don't have to, you just have the opportunity in quasi.
For each one of them speak, is that what you're saying? Yes.
If you have questions of them, you're free to ask them.
But I do have a statement on that.
Oh, we're going.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Okay, Ms. Douglas, you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Layton, did you want to speak?
No, sir.
Did you want to speak?
No, sir.
Okay, next is Patricia K. Trimble.
She's not present.
Okay, and, Ms. Wozniak.
Good evening,
Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, Council. Everything Brenda said, I echo. I do want to say that this really shouldn't have gotten this far because when Mr. Ford bought the lots, the historic neighborhood was already registered under the initial state historical registry. And he should have known that whatever structure he was wanting to place on the lots must fulfill the architecture and aesthetics already outlined via the historic guidelines. So when the council votes on this, just think of the two stripped down mobile homes that he has and what our historic guidelines are and what they were from the beginning. Thank you.
Okay, wait a minute. Mr. Ford or staff, do you have any questions of this person? Okay, thank you. All right, that is the applicant appellants. Next would be staff presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and citizens of Lake City. At this time, I would like to introduce composite evidence into the record. And this was documents that were introduced into the meetings at the last HPA meetings that we had. And it's pictures of the porch along with some letters from the citizens of Lake City. You'll be showing to them.
Yeah, you give them to the clerks, you mark them as the staff exhibit 1. Mr. Angelo, are you gonna put in the application and all the other growth management documents?
Yes, I'll do it. All right, at this time too, I'd like to discuss, COA 23-31, which was for a historic application for 302 Southeast McRae and 308 Southeast McRae. Both these properties are located within the residential single-family zoning district. And per section 4.5.2.1 of the land development regulations, single-family dwellings are a permitted use. Per the definition of a single-family dwelling on page 2-6 of the land development regulations, a residential design manufactured home is a single-family dwelling. On page 2.7 of the land development regulations, defines what a design manufactured residential home is. And And then section 4.2.31 states that how a residential design manufactured home shall be installed. At this time, I would like to read the definition of what a single-family dwelling is. Single-family dwelling means a building containing only one dwelling unit or structurally connected to no other dwelling unit. The term single-family dwelling also includes dwelling units which meet the state of Florida certification requirements for a manufactured building. Manufactured homes defined by these land development regulations as a residential design manufactured home and meet the installation criteria prescribed in section 4.2 of the land development regulations shall be considered a single-family dwelling. The term is not to be construed as including mobile homes, travel trailers, housing mounted on self-propelled or drawn vehicles, tents, houseboats, and other forms of temporary or portable housing. And I would like to introduce that into evidence also.
Okay, that'd be staff exhibit 2.
That's all for me.
Did you want to go ahead and, can you put in the application
Yes.
and the supporting documentation that we received at the historic? You can make that staff's composite 3 as growth management's file concerning this issue.
Okay, you can go ahead. Hey, sir.
Any of the appellates, those listed by Mr. Mayor Witt, wish to ask Mr. Angelo any questions or Mr. Ford?
I'm not one, but can I ask him a question when it's my turn to speak?
You can, well, he may or may not answer, but you can make your presentation to public's coming up next.
Okay.
It'll be in a minute. Okay?
All right, and that's the staff's presentation. Next would be Mr. Ford, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Ford, you can do your presentation now.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I would just like to add that most of y'all are aware that I've presented several different projects for this property. I've been told the whole time that mobile homes were allowed here. And I think if you'll ask Mr. Young or Mr. Angelo, I've agreed to comply with all requests they have made for the porches or any addition they wanted to add to the manufactured homes to make them fit into this neighborhood. I will add also, if you look at the deeds of this property, there is no restrictions on the deeds referring to a historic district. I'm not in a historic district, I'm in a view shed of a historic district. So, and I'm right up against McCray Street. And I've been told by Mr. Young, if I was on the other side of McCray Street, that I wouldn't even be having to go through this. So, you know, I've agreed to do everything the city staff has asked me to do on this project, so. And, I think Mr. Sampson can agree. He was here, I've been up here before, and one of the things that was mentioned at this meeting by the council is y'all know he can put mobile homes on this property. And this was a last resort to do this. I tried different projects that I thought were great projects for this area. It would have been great projects for this neighborhood. And bottom line is, the council and the zoning board has voted it down, so. This is kind of like the last resort I could do with this property. I did offer to sell the property if anybody wanted to buy it. Have sold 2 lots, I only have 4 lots left, so
You know, I don't know what else. If y'all got any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer.
Anybody got any questions, Mr. Ford, or does the staff or the applicants have any questions? I guess not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll get into public comments of people that are not parties to this. As my understanding, we go to the 3-minute rule. Ms. Wozniak has already spoke. Okay, Ms. Lemley, is this be your time to speak?
Before I begin, I have a question I'd like from the board attorney to clarify whether or not Chevelle Young has the right to recuse herself from this vote based upon what she said.
She does.
She does. I think the problem started when there was not a Dave Young. The city did not have a building director. It was handled by the county, and it was just a real blunder. Mr. Ford made his application in August, shortly after I purchased a property on Monroe Street. And I think he thought he could swarm it through the county because the city was without a director. He indicates the address were 302, 306 McCray. I checked with 911, I have not checked in 2 weeks, but if these units face Dade Street, they would have a Dade Street address, not McCray, because the 911, the front of the property faces the street, and they would both face Dade. 302, 306 is not correct. Dade Street is an unimproved grass street. The city, to my knowledge, has not mowed. Some of the occupants and owners have mowed that property. And I left in a hurry. I was working over the house I bought and didn't take my sheet, but this, whatever's put on there, kind of has to be like something in the neighborhood already. And there's nothing like that in the view shed. So I think the council needs to take that into consideration. And I'm going by code to bring up my little house to the historic standards. And I only think that Mr. Ford should take that into consideration. We'd have no problem with a manufactured home if it looked like some of the ones that one of the neighbors submitted or showed at one of the previous meetings. What he has is a 26 by 58 or 28 by 56, what most people would call a trailer. It has nothing architecturally good about it. It's just housing. And the historic board, I think, erred when it came back again, and the chair is the one who was adamantly opposed to it. The board only has 4 members, and somehow or another there needs to be another board member. I don't live in the city, so I can't be on the board, but this board needs to not approve this because it doesn't fit the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, wait a minute. Does anybody want to cross-examine or question her? If not, then
Hold on, what do you mean cross-examine? Ask her a question?
yes.
I wanna know.
One of the parties.
Oh, the parties.
Yeah. Okay, Ms. Lamley, you can sit down then.
Okay.
Okay, next is Ms. George Alice.
I too, do I need to, go in? Okay. I'll be very, very brief based on the information that you've already been given. Growth Management has 2 boards and 1 agency. Planning and Zoning, Board of Adjustments, and Historic Preservation. The members of those 3 boards and agencies are the same people. Different types of requests come before the different boards and agencies. In 1976, HUD, because of the poor construction of mobile homes and trailers, came out with a set of rules and regulations. It's CFR 24, I believe. All of these are included in that. If I'm misquoting, I'll clean it up later. So that is the structural building code for manufactured homes nationwide. It meets minimum building standards. In Florida, it also meets wind load because of the hurricane zones. So the term pre-approved that you've heard this evening, that has been inbred in this all along. If you want to call that pre-approval for building code, that's correct. You cannot pre-approve a certificate of that we're discussing this evening. That comes before the Historic Preservation Board. So all of this about manufactured home, we've had manufactured homes since 1976, for goodness sake. We're not talking about the construction. We all agree they meet safety and construction codes. There is no problem. The only thing we are talking about is the architectural and aesthetic appearance of these homes. They are antithetical to the historic area. They look like a 1960s trailer. They do. There's no getting around it. Mr. Ford mentioned he's done everything that the city has told him to do. He's added a porch to a manufactured home. You cannot attach another structure. The porch he is speaking of is an ancillary structure which will be up against but not attached to the manufactured home itself. They look like 1960s trailer parks. I know it's a manufactured home. That's not what we're discussing. We're discussing if it were a stick built, we're still having the same discussion. What does it look like? You've got about 400 pages of documentation that are in the public record. There is a state law, Florida Statute 163.3177. It clearly states Florida historic preservation laws are a variation of land use laws common to local governments. These historic preservation laws attempt to maintain the appearance and visual integrity of historic districts.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to clean up some of the misunderstandings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions from?
Is there any questions of Ms. Georgialis? I'm sorry. Apparently not.
Just one statement.
Okay.
At the last meeting
Please
where
come to
they,
the podium, the people, I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
at the last meeting where they approved it for the historic board, one of the comments or two of the committee members made was that they have walked this neighborhood and there is no consistency to any type of construction in this neighborhood as far as Victorian, ranch style homes. There's a mix of all kind of homes. Right next to this property is actually a farmer's home house. So that was one of the comments two of the members made, that what do you look for in this historic board, because there is no consistency to this neighborhood.
Thank you. And
May I respond?
yes, ma'am.
This subdivision was platted, and today it's only one block long, it's very small. Was platted in 1938. A few houses were built, the streets were dirt then, they weren't even paved. It is a mix of more expensive homes, and none of them are high class, and small cottages. It is not the large Victorian homes that you think of. There are no two buildings here that are identical. And it is a blend and a mix. It is a very stable, socially neighborhood. Economically, when you change the appearance of it, there's going to be economic damage to the neighborhood. We're not saying that it's old gray ladies. It's not. It is a low to middle income, mixed architecture, but they're all small cottages. My home was built in 1938. It's all brick. I've got 2 lots. I love my house. It even has closets, which are unheard of in 1938. The house across the street that Vicki was talking about, it's diagonally across the street from me. It is a small wood-built cottage. The roof pitches on long homes. There's not a roof pitch there under a 4. The roof pitch on the manufactured model that he wishes to install in this neighborhood, to me, looked like a 2.5. They claim it's a 3, but to me, it looks like a 2.5. Thank you.
Ms. Lydic?
Council, Mr. Chair. I purchased my home, Peterson Hall, as a 25-year-old unmarried woman in 2009, and at that time, I was well aware that it was within the legal boundaries of the Lake Isabella National Historic District. This district was officially proclaimed by the U.S. Department of the Interior 30 years ago last month. I knew these things because I did what realtors call due diligence prior to making the purchase. My home will be 118 years old this coming year, and my husband and I have maintained it to applicable federal, state, and local historic regulations. Here is one such regulation. It is a copy of the Secretary of Interior Standards for Rehabilitation and Guidelines for Rehabilitating Historic Buildings. It is public record, and anyone that can read is able to obtain a copy. It addresses rehabilitation improvements to existing historic structures and districts utilizing best practices as outlined. It also provides guidelines for new construction in historic districts, facaded appropriately so as not to detract from the historic integrity of surrounding structures within designated districts. The 7 aspects of historic integrity are location, design, setting, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association of the listed property or district. And these aspects of historic integrity are outlined in the National Register of Historic Places. It is public record and anyone can read it. What the standards and guidelines in the Lake City Land Development Regulations don't recommend is placing an insufficiently facaded structure, manufactured or otherwise, within a National Historic District, its view shed, and that would intentionally or adversely impact the historic integrity of the district. If the property owner had performed his due diligence, he would already clearly understand what the standards and guidelines state. However, it's been testified at previous meetings that the property owner has not sufficiently proposed facading for his manufactured housing project to mitigate 7 aspects of historic integrity. The Lake Isabella National Historic District is the only residential historic district in Lake Cities. Homeowners within the district and viewshed are proud of these homes. They've performed their due diligence before purchasing these homes and have respect for the hard work their neighbors undertake maintaining them. Several homes in the district have been rehabilitated in the last few years, and these owners had no problem complying with standards and guidelines and the city's LDRs as published. Mr. Ford should be held to the same common sense standards. New construction and properly facaded to conform with these 7 aspects would add value to the district substantively and monetarily. The last thing we need is a property owner who thinks he's above federal, state, and local regulations who failed to do his own due diligence prior to purchase, driving other citizens' property values down with inappropriate adherence to the rules and regulations. And if this property owner feels the need to build inappropriate structures to make a dollar, let him do it elsewhere. If he is incapable of following published historic regulations as written, maybe he needs to sell the land to someone who can. I respectfully request this council to take into consideration the homeowners within this district, its viewshed, and the homes we love and work hard to maintain to the applicable historic standards. And please side with the citizens' appeal to overturn Mr. Ford's proposal as inappropriate for the integrity and district, not in conformance with Lake City LDR Article 10. It is my hope that the property owner will do the right thing by the historic district and repropose a new structure with a new facade design that is more appropriate and in keeping with the applicable federal, state, local historic preservation regulations, standards, and guidelines as published.
Okay.
Thank you, Council and Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Does anybody want to question her, Ms. Locke? Okay, you can be seated.
Thank you, Council.
Mr. Warren.
I had to wake up after that, man. Mel, you've rode through there? You said, I remember you saying you rode through the area, you go down McCray, that's kind of like by your office, you take the back road by Rossinet, back to Robbie, Norby property, right? You come through McCray. Anything over there look consistent to you?
I don't know, I'm listening.
Okay, so nothing over there is consistent. And let me just correct Rocky. Mr. Ford, you're right, but you're wrong. It's actually two former homes that's sitting there. One belongs to Mike Jones, and the other one is being rented by a nurse by the name of Reese Johnson, and they're side by side. So there's two former homes there that were built in the time of the historical district that do not meet none of the aesthetics of the historical district. And then we can go further because it's a tax appraisal fact that nobody in here owns more property in the CRA nor the historic district than I do. And therefore, I want to know, when did vinyl siding come out? Because vinyl siding came out in what year you assume, Mayor?
I'm not sure.
About the 80s, you would say?
Probably.
Yeah, why does my building that has vinyl siding on it? I'm right here on Marion Street, right across the street from the bus station. It got vinyl siding on it. My other buildings, right in those historic districts, it's got Hardy Board on it. What year Hardy Board came out? Like in the early 2000s? Yeah, so I don't understand how we even get here, Mayor. He got the NOA approval, which is what they're talking about, because I was on the board. They say they want me on the board, but you have to follow the rules. They already got the NOA from the board, which is the notice of appropriation. It's over. Plus the LDR says that he can put a mobile home there. This council told him he can put a mobile home there. What you have is a community that is now having buyer's remorse from not accepting what Mr. Ford proposed the first time. Never thinking that he would go to the extent of actually putting mobile homes there. You can't stop him. It's totally legal. He's already met every threshold. And as bad as we need housing, why would you stop it? Furthermore, he would kill y'all on an appeal through the courts. If you don't want to fight the fight, I'm back. He could deal them over to me. I fight y'all, sue y'all, win, give it back to him with his mobile homes there, and he still win. So really, it's up to y'all tonight whether y'all just do the right thing. That's all I'm saying. Be right for people who need housing, and a man who did the right thing based on what this council said and based on getting approval from the historical. He met the NOA. Thank you.
Okay. That's all I have of the public, so, Mr. Kennon, at this time we go.
You're fixing to get called back up.
Okay.
So at this time, we would have a closing statement by staff. It may be important for staff to let the council know what the recommendation of staff was as presented to the historical board and the reasons why.
Dave Young, Director of Growth Management. When this came up, it was discussed the first time, and at the first meeting back in, I believe it was September, that's where we found out that it was never properly noticed, but it was afterwards that we found that out. The board passed it and turned it over to Mr. Angelo and myself to work with Mr. Ford on getting the building or the manufactured home to where it would be blending in. We worked with Mr. Ford on it, and it was at that time that we found out that that meeting had not been properly noticed. So we contacted the attorney. The attorney says that meeting is null and void. So we had to redo a whole new meeting, notice it properly, and send it out. We had that meeting. The board, because we did not have an attorney for that meeting, the board had questions because of the participants bringing up items on legalities. So it was voted to continuance until another meeting when we could have the attorney present. We scheduled that one properly, had it come in. The HPA voted to accept it and as Mr. Ford had presented. We worked with them. The porch, Mrs. Lindley is right, cannot be permanently attached to a manufactured home unless he decides to give up the manufactured home sticker, which he would have to surrender it to the state of Florida if it is attached to the manufactured home, which he can do. The skirting, we discussed with him different types of skirting. He was going to bring the siding completely down to the ground that is shown on the mobile home, or on the manufactured home. And that met the criteria. He was putting shutters on the windows. He was, the porch was gonna be a gable porch, a continuation of the gable that was on the front of the manufactured home. So it was all approved and ready to go, and then an appeal was filed to come before the city council. And that's where it stands now.
What was staff's recommendation after those changes proposed and were agreed upon?
We agreed, we were ready to issue the permit.
Any questions about the appellant, the parties that filed the appeal, is who gets to ask the questions.
Ms. Douglas, you need to come up to the podium if you have a question, sir.
Not so much a question as just a statement. I believe, yes, they may have said that the September meeting of the Historic Preservation Agency was null and void. But at the subsequent meeting on October 17th, final approval was tabled, but it was stated in that meeting they had already given pre-approval. At the following meeting of the HPA on November 7th, the chairman clearly stated that public comment would be restricted to only consideration of the appearance of they're manufactured homes, but everybody calls them mobile homes, right? So, only consideration of the appearance of the mobile homes. Why was public comment restricted? When was final approval ever given if all of this stuff has been tabled? On and on and on. One meeting was null and void, one meeting the issue was tabled. When was this final approval given? Was it behind closed doors? We don't know. That's my statement. It's just, I think that this whole situation has not been done the way it should have been done.
Okay, does any of the other applicants want to make a closing statement?
Thank you.
Okay, if none of them want to make a closing statement, then it'll be up to Mr.
I'm sorry?
Will the public, you're given another opportunity? There's several items that have been brought up that need clarification.
No, ma'am, the public is limited, the public non-party participants are limited to the 3 minutes. The parties who file the appeal have party status. That's why they get to make a closing statement if they so desire.
Okay, Mr. Ford, you want to make your closing statement?
Mr. Mayor, Council, one of the things that's been comment that's been made is about the value of the houses at this time or after the manufactured houses go in. I can tell you as a developer, there's nothing more detrimental to a neighborhood than abandoned houses, rundown houses, vacant houses. Nothing more detrimental to a neighborhood. And there is several of these in this neighborhood now. So anything that we can do in this neighborhood at this time is a plus for this neighborhood. And also, there is a big need for affordable housing in Lake City. There's a need for housing, in Lake City overall, but a very big need for affordable housing in Lake City and Columbia County as a whole. And that is what we're trying to provide here, is affordable housing. Y'all know what the interest rate is right now. You know how hard it is coming up with down payment to a house. This manufactured housing opens up for several different opportunities for people that couldn't buy a house otherwise. So just keep that in mind, that there is a big need for affordable housing in Lake City.
Right, let them know that you also.
The public hearing is now closed and the council will enter into deliberations. After deliberations, a motion should be made, which would presumably either affirm the board's action or reverse the board's action. What is your counsel? Discussion by council of the evidence presented as it applies to the requirements of the ordinances and applicable law.
I'm so sorry, excuse me, can I say one more thing?
Very quickly.
I apologize. At the last meeting, the original motion to approve was made on the premise that the property owner could do anything he wants. That's how the motion was worded. And then subsequently it was seconded,
By Sean, and the second stated.
Okay,
I apologize.
Mr. Mayor, we've already done.
Okay, we're,
Thank you.
Okay. All right, council. Yes, sir.
I just got a couple of questions. Of course, we have rules and regulations that we have to follow, especially when it comes to certain areas, preservations and things like that. And it appears to me, Mr. Ford has checked all the boxes, from what I'm hearing, and from what I've read. So, I don't see why come we wouldn't do whatever we need to do to get those houses there, and make sure that we keep that area, keep that area preserved as well. So, and the staff, from what I'm hearing, growth management, they work really hard with Mr. Ford to accomplish this mission. So, and all the boxes have been checked. So, that's all I gotta say.
Mr. Mayor, I got a comment. So when we sat here, when this property came up for rezoning, which is a different process, in that process, I'd asked David Young at that meeting, in front of the groups, we had a big group turnout that was against having the houses that looked like the community that were duplexes built. And at that meeting, I read from the LDR specifically and asked David Young at that meeting, if you read this is already set up for a manufactured home, it's already ready. And I remember, and I can't remember the exact commenter, but someone yelled out, and if you go back, you can catch it on the audio, we'd rather have mobile homes. Well, we declined that, now we're gonna have a mobile home, because if you look at this, and according to what Mr. Young said, we followed every rule that we're to follow within the city. And there's only so far you can go with telling people what they can and can't do with their property. When they follow the rules, they go through, and the way I read this is the historic, and the HPA approved this already, so this is an appeal to deny that. And so if that group approved it, I don't know why we would not affirm it. That's my comment.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I may, it may be a good point. Some of the procedures of the appeal and some things to keep in mind by the council when they start into the motion area. Number one, transcripts of the hearing, or hearings in this case, are to be provided by those that file the appeal.
Right.
And presented to this council for consideration if they want to point out an alleged error or discrepancy within that, or those meetings. Transcripts were not obtained, and I noticed that's even confirmed on the November 7th agenda down at the bottom under YouTube channel information pursuant to 286-0105. Florida statute, the city hereby advises the public if a person decides to appeal any decision made by the city council, apply also to the historic preservation, there will need to be a record of those proceedings. Of course, there's not been any mention or reference to a specific part of those meetings. I just wanted to let the council know that if someone wanted to rely on those, the persons listed who filed appeals would have been their responsibility. And then the controlling part of the LDR is Article 10, as Mr. Angelo said. This is considered major work under that. And the limitation is to the exterior changes visible to the public. It's essentially the overriding principle. And Mr. Young, I believe, went over those things that staff requested to make the exterior changes more compatible to the area. And so the issue of mobile homes has come up, and you'll see it in some of the appeals that were actually filed. And before I forget, the appeals that were filed need to be made part of the record automatically. But Florida statute 553.38 indicates that local rules concerning zoning, architectural, and aesthetic issues must be enforced without any distinction as to whether a building is a conventionally constructed or manufactured building. So the analysis is the building could be either one, the site built or mobile home, manufactured home, which this is a manufactured home by statute. You're looking at the aesthetics and not any peripheral considerations of mobile homes, values, depreciations, those types of things. So just a few points, some of which were illustrated by staff, but may help the council in guiding their deliberations.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So would we make a motion, or this might be a question for the attorney, so the motion is to affirm the decision of the HPA's issuance of certificate COA 23-31, that be correct?
That would be correct, and it would be necessary to list some of the factors that the council believes would substantiate the historic board's vote.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I make the motion to affirm the HPA's issuance of certificate of appropriateness COA 23-31 based on the presentation by the professional that works for the city, David Young and Robert Angelo, and that we follow the rules within the LDR and within as it's laid out. And with that being the case, I would make that motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion by council? Ms. Archie, call it up.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Young? I'm sorry, that's right, I apologize. Mr. Jernigan?
Yes.
Mayor Witt?
No. All right. So that was affirmed the board's authority. 3-1. Okay, next we have item 2, discussion possible action proposal to investigate raising given by Paul Dow. And that's very serious, Mr. Sampson.
Would there be any comments after the end?
No.
Because I failed to say, what about the road?
Okay, it means that, as far as that.
Or moving forward. Okay, Mr. Mayor, so at the last meeting, I had asked that we would be provided the information on the raises specifically that were done at the end of the Mr. Dial administration. We've got a lot of documents here, even more, well more than we asked for, but I think what we should do, what I'm going to recommend, is that we would go to James Moore, our auditor, and ask them to audit these raises to see if they're within the purview of the city manager. There's a couple issues at play. One, when I got the documentation I requested, I noticed that the reason for the raise.
Ma'am, I need to focus on this. And if you have legal questions on that or handle this decision, I think this needs to be your own legal counsel.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Sampson.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, I can see that.
Go ahead.
So when you looked at the actual documentation of why the raises were given, some of them report back to a study. Now, this board voted and approved a study, but this board never saw the study, never, other than that last meeting, and we got some pages of it. And the pages we got weren't complete, but it showed several things. One, it showed an inconsistency of raises. It showed some people got them, some people didn't. Some of the people on the list got more than what's on the pay study. So to me, there's nothing in there that documents this is why employee A got the raise to the pay study, but employee B didn't get it. So I don't know how that could, I don't know how you could do that. Either if you're gonna go by the study, now in the past we did the study, and I know y'all remember the study before, we decided as a group, this board decided we weren't going to the study. Because the study was fine if you lived in Jacksonville or Gainesville or wherever. We looked at it and said, well, people in Lake City don't make that. If you look at the average person that's a citizen of this city, they don't make that. So, and if you remember that study, we looked at it and that was a different council, but we said, hey, we're not going with those numbers. Now this new study, we've never looked at it. So there were raises made and adjustments given in the 12th hour to a study that we never looked at. That's a major issue to me because the council should have approved if we're gonna go with the study, first of all, and go with it. I saw a document that looked like a work study in process. It wasn't a completed document. That might be why we've not approved it. Maybe there's not been a completed document. But to me, I think it would be crucial to have the final work study document, then look at it and go through it and say, well, why did employee A get a raise and employee B didn't? And I think the best way to do that would be to have an independent audit. And that's what I would recommend, is to have that audited to see, one, if it was fair and consistent across the board. Some of the raises listed were, and you look through the long package we were given, you had the negotiated raises, the step raises, a lot of those I'm not really concerned about. They're contracted in. But the specific raises, and I don't know, there could be other ones. I'm not an auditor. I just look at the document every year and I say, whoa, this stands out. So there could be more. I don't know.
Anybody else got anything?
Well, if we do that, I mean, we need to look at everybody.
I agree.
Because like I say, it's some big raises was given out. And that needs to go back to whenever. But like I say, I don't know exactly when, but I want to say that when Wendell Johnson was our city manager, he was going to give out some extra raises. But the raises he wanted to give out, he brought them before the council. He didn't just give them out on his own. And the way this looking, Mr. Dow knew he was going to leave. So I'm just going to give out raises to certain individuals, and that's not right. So if you're going to do that study, we're going to look at everybody.
How far back you talking about?
Mr. Mayor, I'd say back from the time that Joe Helfenberger left Ford, because I think that way you have consistency through that time period. I mean, that would be my idea, because did we miss something else? I don't think we did, but we could have, because again, we're not auditors, it's in our specialty. So to me, I would say, especially from the time period that we named the last manager to when he left, I'm most concerned with the stuff that he knew that he did at the end when he knew he was leaving. But I think we err on the side to say, hey, maybe people gotten raises in bunches. Maybe there was a big raise one year and then another year to try and split it down. So instead of a 40% raise, you might have got 20 and 20. So I think we should look at the whole thing. Now, again, I'm not saying any of the employees are complicit in any of that or that there's anything necessarily wrong. I think the documentation's horrible. And I did have an employee that reached out. It was an employee, and I'll disclose it, he's not here, but it was the HR director at the time. And he actually tipped me off to some of this. He said, hey, you ought to look a little bit closer about the raises. And I know last year at budget time, there were people giving promotions and it never got advertised. Now, city policy says, if you create a new position, there's a period of time within that is advertised and then people internally have an opportunity to apply. Well, what you do is you cut into interior promotion if all you're gonna do is say, I like employee A, so they're gonna get promoted without it being open to anybody else. You don't know what you're missing on the other side. There might be a great person to fill that position if we need that position. But the way this has been done, he stated to me the reason he left this city, and again, he's not here, he's willing to come forward if we take this to an investigation, if he's subpoenaed, he'll come in. But I think we should possibly do that depending on what an auditor would say, because when you got HR professionals that work here saying it wasn't done right and it wasn't done within the rules, I think we should listen.
So question, when did he speak these words? When did he say this? Was
He called me
employed here?
after Mr. Dial left.
Okay, he just gave his address, then why
I
he didn't
did
speak
not
up when he
disagree
was
with
here?
that. And my question on that, can I answer that, Mr. Mayor? So part of my question on that was, why didn't you come and stand at that podium and say it when it was going down? And his answer was, why I left. I'm like, to me, that's a little bit of a weak answer.
I can't see him as a credible witness.
Mr. Johnson, do you have anything you would like to add to this?
No, not at this time. Well, my concern is, if we just do an investigation, we got employees that, have gotten raises, maybe they were more favorable than what somebody else got. But is the intention of council to undo them, or, Mr. Dowell's not here anymore, so are we gonna just do damage and spend money and not do anything about it? Now, prospectively, I think we need to set policies on raises and how they're done, and if there's something going on that's been done to Mr. Dial or all the way back to Mr. Elfenberger or the whenever, we need to set a policy of this is how raises are to be handled, but just to investigate and embarrass people, I'm not sure that's what we need to do.
My thing is, I don't wanna embarrass nobody, but if you got a substantial amount of raises and you shouldn't have gotten it because somebody could give you a raise, that ain't right. So if a person got a raise that just because I'm your friend or I like you or whatever, and I'm gonna give you a big raise, because I know I'm leaving. That's not right.
But then the question lies, how do you determine whether they deserve the raise or not? How can we sit here and say, well, he gave this raise and they didn't deserve the raise?
That's I'm your friend, I like the way you work.
You don't know if that's his friend?
But again, he gave, okay.
Mr. Mayor.
He gave his
I'd like
raise.
to speak,
I'll go ahead.
whenever. I looked over these, some of the raises or whatever, and it was a little bit, over the limit. However, I just don't believe that, Mr. Dow, gave these raises and the parties that didn't deserve them, to parties that didn't deserve them. I think that he has some kind of criteria in his mind that this person deserved this raise. Now, what was that criteria? What guideline did he go by? I can't tell you. But I don't think he just went out and say, I'm gonna give this one a raise because I don't like him, but I do like him or whatever. I don't think he did that. I think he had a guideline and only he knew what the guideline was. And you guys are right. Giving out 40% raises, 25, 32, you're absolutely correct. And he should have brought it before the council when it comes to those enormous raises like that. But I'm pretty sure that he had a guideline on these raises, and he was the only one that knew those guidelines, and he did it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So the key point with HR, the most important thing is documentation, documentation, documentation. So when you're ready to terminate someone, you need to have documentation. When you're ready to promote someone or give them money, you need to have documentation. And I'm not so certain that there was any documentation. I received a scant bit of documentation, which you guys probably have seen. I mean, it's like written down pay study. That's not documentation. So I'm not even sure, was there documentation in the file before I asked for it? I don't know. I can't tell you that. So what he's done is, whether it was valid or justified or not, he's cast a pall on every one of them, because now there's no documentation. So can we build documentation to say, hey, someone deserved a, let's just pick 17% raise? I mean, maybe you can, but to not have that documentation is a disservice to the entire community. Maybe he had a very valid reason, but to me, you put the pen to the paper and it's documented. I think the only way you can be fair, because let's say I'm sitting in a cubicle by one of these people that got the raise and I didn't get it. Well, I can't prove why this person got the raise, why didn't I get the raise? And I think that's the other thing you gotta remember. So you've got 10 or 12 employees, but how many employees does the city have in total? And if you look at the longer pay study, not that little thing we were given last time, there's tons of people that don't match that pay study. And I don't think this council would go by that pay study and say, this is what we're gonna pay out. We can't. No, I know we couldn't. We could not budget those funds without a massive tax increase. So how do you go and say the only documentation is written down pay study, and then one, the council's not approved the pay study, and two, there's no other documentation to say, you know, why this person, why not that person? There's gotta be documentation, which again is why I think there's several things important to know. We got some dates of the raises. I'm really interested in knowing about some and when they went down in relation to when did Mr. Dial know he was leaving. I'm not sure if anyone on the council knew he was leaving in advance, but for some reason, he decided to leave. I don't know what that is. That's his own decision. We tried to talk him out of leaving as a group. He decided to leave anyways. Then things didn't work out, whatever happened, and then he came back and tried to come back. So to me, I think we should have closure on this by just freeing up all the employees we got and having an auditor look at it. We already paid the auditor. I'm sure there'll be another fee, but just say, hey, can you look at this and make sure that nothing violates the law? That nothing looks out of order in that regard, because I think we're setting this up for the people that didn't get that raise to come back and say, where's mine? And then how are we gonna fulfill that? We don't have the money to do it.
Let's see, public comments there.
But once there's a motion made and seconded, then we're gonna have public comments.
You're gonna have discussion. You're gonna just have discussion after the motion is made?
That's the way, the proper way to do it, that I found out at our ethics training, and the gentleman that was here before. Am I right, Mr. Cannon?
That's correct.
Again, where are those, where's that documentation or guidelines? I couldn't tell you that, but I honestly believe that he didn't do this with malice. And for us to hire an auditor to start an investigation, whatever the case may be, we just investigating ourselves. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. That's what I'm looking at. And we could do it, but we just shoot ourselves in the foot. Because we know that it's done, it's written. We're gonna investigate something that's already written. I mean, what
Checks and balances, Mr. Mayor.
You know, what are we investigating?
Wasn't it?
Well, I agree, prospectively, we need to make some adjustments. And if there's no documentation, what are we gonna investigate?
I think validity. Validity is crucial. I think, how many employees does the city have?
I'm not positive.
How many only got 3%? Well, we don't know that answer. Do we know what other documentation's in the file for those people explaining why they didn't get promoted or raised? Because when you looked at a lot of them, it's just a raise because of a pay study that, again, we have not approved. Now, this board previously, back when Mr. Jefferson was here before I was here, they passed a rule, and I haven't seen it yet. I know I've asked about it, and I know you guys may remember voting on it, and that was back before the big issue where all of the documents were lost, but there was a rule passed that limited how big a raise the city manager could get.
And if he went over that limit, he had to bring it before council. Again, I don't know the exact date, whenever it was, but it was something supposed to be documented about.
Oh, where's the, here again, where's the documentation?
Discussed, but I don't know that it ever got,
Yeah,
so if we can't find it,
I know, I've got to do some deeper digging on that.
If we can't, If we can't find it, it doesn't exist. And so Mr. Dial didn't leave proper documentation. So we wanna investigate, like we can get in his mind and read why he gave these raises. Is it justifiable? I guess if we decide, what are the consequences gonna be? If we can say what the consequences are gonna be, we'll know whether it makes sense to even do an investigation. What are the consequences gonna be?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I'd propose everything up to and including possible termination depending on an employee's involvement in the raise. I would say up into rolling back the raise, because if people got raises for a special deal, which I don't know if they did, but if they did and it's uncovered, are you saying you still want to pay someone who went to Mr. Dial possibly, now I'm not saying they did, and said, hey, I know you're leaving, why don't you cut me a little deal?
How are you gonna do that?
I don't know, I think it's time for public record to see communications between employees and Mr. Dial possibly.
Well, I would say, I don't want nobody to be terminated, first of all. But that roll back to their original salary, whatever the money they have received, that was a gift from the city. We'll put them back where they supposed to be.
For what reason? They were given a raise. We don't know why they were given a raise.
The amount of the raise that they was given.
So you wanna, is what you're proposing, Mr. Hill, so you wanna take the whole raise away from them? Including I think everybody got a 3%, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
So that's what I'm saying, but I'm not saying take that back, but just say, for example, I seen somebody on here with a 40.51% raise. Okay?
I can speak to that one, Mayor.
Well, no, maybe I missed that. But there's a 45% raise. I missed it. I was a little bit off.
And I would say every raise needs to be reviewed to me.
Right, and go which way? Just take it away from them?
No, I think we need to review it and make sure, because maybe there's a raise that has documentation we just don't have.
Okay.
Maybe in our request, there's something else that exists. I can't tell you, I only know what was provided, and I didn't see anything provided. There could be raises on here, some of these raises definitely have documentation, like I'm sure that if you look at what Mr. Johnson did for the chief, I'm sure there's some documentation, I've seen the documentation, I mentioned it last time, he properly documented the file. If you look at that form, it explains why Chief Wayinger, and there was another one, Boozer, Assistant Chief, the documentation Mr. Johnson provides what should be in the file, and I believe that's always been the practice of the city. I don't know what happened there, and I can't speak for Mr. Johnson because this happened before his time, but the way he did, so there's gonna be some of these that has documentation. And I think that's the important thing of why you go to an auditor. We paid the auditor already to keep us out of trouble. We gotta have a third party investigate it, in my opinion, because otherwise you're not gonna know what's right and what's not. And then they can come back and find weaknesses too. They can find weaknesses and say, okay, well, this raise was okay, but what about 1, 2, and 3 over here? They were supposed to get a raise too and didn't get it. And then you find out what it affects, because it could be someone got a raise they really deserved, but this council wouldn't have chosen that raise, because then you have another list of people that would have got that raise. Now who's in the right there? You say, okay, well, employee A keeps the raise and the other 4 just are out of luck. That's not fair either, going back to what we were talking about. Is it fair to take a raise? I don't know. I'd have to see the full audit. And since we have James Moore on contract, we don't have to go out for an RFP or RFQ. We can go ahead and call them up, give them the parameters of the raises, and have them look into it. And I'd make a motion to do that.
Got a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion of council?
Mr. Mayor, are we open for comments from?
Oh, yeah, public comments, Mr. Warren.
I mean, it's amazing how I get kicked out of meetings and people just do what they want to do. People walk up to the podium and then y'all forget. You get amnesia that it's time for people to be called up to the podium. I guess we'll say that for another day. And for my attorneys, they've been paid good to come see y'all very soon. So man, let me say this. So the city is going to shoot themselves in the foot. And y'all are gonna sit back and destroy the whole morale and destroy this whole city. That's what you're getting ready to do now. Now, because I've seen where if you go back, and what bothers me is, and nobody ain't paying attention to this, is that you got Mr. Sampson concerned about a certain time period, which is October 4th. But Mr. Dial gave Ms. Sykes, deputy secretary, a deputy clerk, almost a 50% raise in July. So I want to know, why is the focus on October and not July when it comes to her deputy clerk? And hold on, Mr. Mayor. And why are we dealing with something that's over decision made, shouldn't even be on the agenda, and we should be moving on? We've made this, you all have made this, and y'all have let a council member make this a problem that was not a problem. You don't have no bickering going on among staff about these raises. You only have bickering about this going on with one council member. The unity in this city is not at odds with each other about what Mr. Dial did. Where is the room full of employees that's gonna be bitching and whining about it? They don't exist. So there's not a problem. It's only a problem with one particular person that everybody's mad at Mr. Dial because they didn't like Mr. Dial for some reason or whatever case may be. Mr. Dial gave raises higher than the ones he gave throughout his time period here. Let's just leave this alone. Do not vote, entertain this. This is only gonna kill the morale, and you're gonna have people walking away from this job, and you're gonna further deteriorate the possibility of anybody wanting to do business with Lake City the way y'all do things. Learn to take solid advice. Citizens know way more than you all know. Where's the room full of complaints? Employees should be complaining. You ain't got no employees up here complaining. That's who the money went to. That's who should be up here crying and fussing with y'all about it's unfair. They ain't up here. Man, y'all need to wake up and smell the coffee. If the employees ain't up here, why y'all even worried about it? They ain't worried about it. Y'all finna make a mess out of nothing for no reason. This is craziness. The employees are happy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's the
Mr.
only one I
Mayor,
had.
so clearly on the motion, I wanted to cover the entire time Mr. Dial was here.
That's what I understood.
Yes, okay.
Okay, anything that, Ms. Sykes, you call the roll?
No. Okay, I did have
Did
a
you
few
want to
more-
speak?
I have a few more questions. Because I'm really concerned, the consequences. And like I said earlier, it just doesn't sit well with me. And to be honest about it, I want to just let it go. And the reason I say that is, it could be more harm than good. And I've been wrestling with this thing, and I've been thinking about it. And we have to look at the whole picture. You gotta look at the whole picture. We can't just look at the fact of what Mr. Dial is gone. He has gone. We don't know what his intentions were. We can't read his mind. Nobody probably called and asked him but me. We don't know. And those employees should not suffer if he made a bad call. But we're gonna get on down this agenda and see where some more bad calls were made. There was no proper documentation. We're gonna find that there's some more improper documentation, if any. So let's just move on with this. Save the employees. Let's just let it go. And I'm not saying don't make some changes. We can make changes. We can make this policy do what it's supposed to do. And then we shouldn't be back here in this space. Now, we hold some responsibility too. We gotta be mindful of that. So let's
Okay,
just
speak real quick because we've already gotten past where we've already.
Well, Mr. Mayor, and
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just didn't understand it.
And I apologize for being out of order, but we still haven't followed the order that I originally addressed because you can't discuss it until the motion brings it off the floor, and we had a whole discussion before the motion. So we're out of order anyway. That being said, my question would be, does the city and the city council members not get a profit and loss at the end of the month of what we're paying out? That this just comes out in the month of December of things that were done, that we didn't see an increase in payroll? It concerns me from the notion of, if you were in corporate America and this happened, everybody would be fired. Because in corporate America, you cannot get a P&L or not look at your P&L monthly and have such an increase in pay without somebody calling and saying, hey, what happened? And so one of the reasons you say.
Could I answer that?
Yeah.
So from where this came from, so I can tell you, every year, we do a budget cycle in October. So before October, we got in our budget a layout of everybody's proposed salary with a 3% raise. That's what the administration does every year. So you get the name, the position, what they pay now, and the 3% raise. And so every year in December, to give time to get into that, because you've got to go through a pay cycle first, because you want to make sure it matches. So I always ask for that follow-up, just like you're saying, because I grew up, large companies where you had weekly and monthly profitability meetings. So I asked for the documentation to compare, and that's when I noticed discrepancies that we didn't budget for. So if you budget a person to make a certain amount, and then you see it's way more, that shows a red flag. And I agree exactly what you're saying. If anybody does that, you have a different meeting with the red, you give them the red ticket and say, move on down the road.
My concern is, though, we said in December, I believe monthly the council members get what we spent out and what we took in as the city. So if we don't, then I question, how do we take care of the citizens' finances if we only look at them at the year? And my ear tickles because I've heard in meetings where we talk about billing the attorney and looking at bills that this person paid and that person paid. So if we're looking at bills, why are we not looking at payroll? But any other Fortune 500, even with the city manager form of government, that's like saying that the House of Representatives don't get an account of what happens because we have a president. That's the whole point of check and balances, is that everybody sees the documentation and you can correct it. Because like Mr. Warren just said, and other people in the gallery have said, what you're going to do, because you need to do it, but what you're going to do is cause a stir of, well, now everybody, it's online, you can see what everybody has. And there are some people who have $10 raises. But if we would do our part of financially checking the bills every month of checks and balances from the finance department, from the city manager, from what we put in the meetings, we wouldn't be here. And once again, that goes back to my concern of the things that we waste time on that are not dollars being spent, that you got now. There's one individual that over a 12-month span, it would be $18,000 increase. If that was corporate America, somebody would be fired. And so if it's not, then go back to where we're having workshops. How do we do a profit and loss sheet and adequately keep up with the people's money? Because it's embarrassing. So
agreed.
Mayor, may I comment to that?
Yes.
So I do work with my finance director, and we just recently done our quarterly budget performance report. Each department has actually performed under their budget for personnel services for this quarter. We're in our first quarter, all of them are at least 25% and under. So far as the performance, yes, I do check that. I do it quarterly, I do not do it monthly. But if something does arise that needs my attention, my finance director will bring it to me.
And Mr. Johnson, I know that's not your, you haven't been handling that. So
Yes, sir.
That failed.
Oh, no, sir, I didn't take it that way. I just wanted to inform you.
Ms. Young, I want to let you finish up, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, yeah, you're good, go ahead.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment about what Mr. Johnson just said? I think that's crucial. I said, so your first quarter ends December, and then you'll go back and look at it. And then also, when you look at the line items, some positions may not be filled to make it work out. I mean, it's possible that's the case. However, at some point, those positions will be filled, possibly, because they didn't come back and, sometimes people come before this board and they remove positions. So to me, again, we have a motion to do that investigation through our auditor through the time that Mr. Dahl was here. As far as what would happen after, I think that's up to the board at the time they get the documentation. It could be there's nothing wrong. And I think that's good because you get from citizens. Citizens are interested in how their tax dollars are being spent. I don't know how many calls y'all got about people's fire assessment going up. I got a ton of them, especially commercial people. They called and said, hey, you know, a couple $1,000s here, they're not happy about it. So where's the money going? So I think it is our fiduciary responsibility to make sure how's the money being spent? Are we keeping an eye on the ball? And then sometimes that creates issues because things slide through.
Okay. Ms. Archer, you call the roll, please.
Well, we didn't keep an eye on the ball, but this is a wake-up call. Now we know we need to keep our eye on the ball. So.
May I ask a clarifying question? Mr. Sampson had mentioned he wanted to do the investigation for the entire time Mr. Dial was here. Mr. Dial was here for many, many, many years. So we're
No.
not
From the
running
time he
back.
took over, about,
Okay.
what was it, 14 months from the time we,
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that because that would
Is
be a
that-
lot.
is that agreeable on the motion?
That would be up to, you and Mr. Hill.
Okay.
Anything additional, Mayor? You ready?
Ready?
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Young?
No.
Mr. Jernigan?
No.
Mayor Whit?
No. Okay, next item is discussion possible action proposal to investigate severance pay of Paul Dowd. Mr. Sampson.
Okay, again, we had someone stand at the podium and inform this council that Mr. Dial received severance pay. We didn't know it beforehand. I don't know how you pay someone severance pay when they quit a job, especially when the contract very clearly said that was an item 9 item on the contract. If you all reviewed it, that was sent out with the package. Item 7 is the items he would have got paid the severance pay for. Items 8, once he went into that, it said if you leave due to item 7, then you get paid. He resigned under item 9, which was a resignation. Now, I don't think you're calling back money from Mr. Dial either. I think we have 2 culpable parties here. One is our attorney, and the second is you, Mr. Mayor, because you signed a document and it did not come to this council to be approved. That has never been the case with severance. You do not sign, I don't know how you or the attorney were authorized to sign a document paying severance to someone that quit. And it never came before this council. The document itself says separation and the council's name's included. I didn't vote on it, I didn't see it, I didn't know about it. And had someone not stood at that podium and said something, I wouldn't have known to ask for the payout on it. So at that point, getting the payout, it makes sense, well, something's going on here. And I know before, when Mr. Dial was applying way back to that job and then you told him it was okay and all that, y'all had a special relationship. So I don't know who's gonna pay the city back. But either the E&O insurance from the attorney's office needs to pay us that money back, or maybe you do, Mr. Mayor, because you may be liable for that. Because there is no way this council approved a severance package that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm open to hear if any of y'all had approved a severance package outside of this meeting, but you don't quit a job and get severance. I've had more people in HR reach out to me on that than anything we've ever done here. How is someone getting severance when they quit?
Well, Mr. Sampson, again, the attorney, the attorney and the mayor, they signed off on that severance packet. If they did, I mean, I looked at it too, and I was trying to make heads and tails out of it, don't get me wrong, but hey, he's got a signed document that, that's what he was supposed to get. Now, did the attorney let us down? I would say yes, he did with that. However, he signed it, the mayor signed it. There's no way we could, we may be in for another lawsuit, and we made a mistake. And how do you fix that mistake?
We didn't make a mistake. This council didn't make a mistake. The mayor and the attorney made a mistake and signed a document we didn't approve allocating funds on the city's behalf. So to me, how you said that is we go after the people who did that. So that's why attorneys carry an E&O insurance policy. They made a mistake, the mistake's been made. You can't go after Mr. Dial, he's got a signed document. It's not too dissimilar from the mistake that was made by Mr. Helfenberger for the $200,000 we gave to an organization that never came forward, but it was on a federal form. And, you know, to me, that's partially why Mr. Helfenberger is no longer here. But in this case, I think those two parties that signed that form, y'all looked at the form. It's not right for that to go forward without this group approving it. Look at page 1 of that form. Look at page 1. And what does it say at the top of that? Now, we approved the contract with that blank in there. But if you go back to Amy Fields' contract, she had that blank in there too. And she never got severance because this board didn't approve it when she resigned. So when you resign, you don't get severance. And the contracts are pretty similar. So to me, why are we making this and say, well, let's just water under the bridge when we've got two people that's sitting right up here that put us in this predicament, that caused this city this loss of funds, and we can say, hey, let's make a claim on the E&O insurance for our attorneys, because that's what they have it for. And if we need to, let's file a complaint as needed. And I agree, and I agree with some of your point, but as far as what the mayor did, I don't know how you sign a document and you are putting the city on the hook to pay funds when you know this board never approved that document. You know we never approved that document.
It was the attorney's opinion that was the thing to do.
And that's a smart thing to say. So that tells me that the attorney told you to sign that and you signed it on his word. So again, it goes back to the E&O insurance now. Walker, Folds, Robinson, Kennedy, Kendron, they're liable and we need to go after that. I don't know what the next step to do that is, but there is no way. Mr. Kennan knows how I feel about this. We've had a conversation about it. It's not correct, it's not right, and it's not in the contract. And we can sit here and say, well, let's just water under the bridge. No, because if we do that, then the bad behavior continues. So what we've got to do is say, hey, it's time that we make someone stand accountable for not doing what was correct. And now's that time.
What does the attorney have to say about this? Did he say anything about it? Oh, what do you got to say about it, Mr. Cannon?
Given the nature of the motion, I'll say nothing at this point. If the claim is made, we'll defend it.
What motion was made?
There's not a motion, but there's conversation.
There's just conversation, there's no motion there.
When there's been a threat of an E&O claim, then we'll defend it under that jurisdiction.
So I do have a question, Ms. Sykes, I see that you signed, and I know you were signing saying that these were the people who actually signed, but did you know did you know the contents of what you were signing?
She only signed as a recipient.
I understand,
No.
I understand, you didn't know?
No, I was just asked to attest to that.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you, I just want to hear what you got to say. Did you know, this is a question for you, Mr. Cannon. Did you know that, that was illegal? Did you know that was legal for,
Mr. Jernigan, I'm not going to comment further based on the threat of an E&O claim.
It's not gonna, okay. You can go ahead and take a speak. Okay.
Well, I will say, Mr. Dow, he in good shape. It's signed. Attorney, mayor, and signatures attest, notarized, so to speak.
Mr. Mayor, what needs to be done to pursue whether or not that's the correct and proper thing to be done? Or does this council want to pursue it? Or do you just wash that off and say, you know what, mistakes are made, so what?
It's y'all's call.
Well, the document is signed, so we don't have a leg to stand on. You have a signed document, you have a signed document.
We just didn't approve it. So I think we have some legal avenue we could pursue, but the council's got to agree to that. It's got to have a motion and a vote. So the question is, are we gonna go after people who make their own rules and abscond with the public's funds, or are we just gonna let it happen?
So the people are, state who the people are.
I think it was clear. I think to me, the culpable parties are exactly the ones that signed that document, the mayor and the attorney's office. The mayor said he was told by the attorney to sign it, so I don't know, but I think needs more than a question like that. I mean, is it often you're asked to sign things by the attorney that are paying people out money that it doesn't come to the council? I mean, is that a common occurrence? Because I would think if that's a common occurrence, there may be other money out there that we don't know about. So to me, I'm just really concerned by this process in general. I mean, we have never done it like this. The city screwed up, but this is really screwed up. I don't know how you can sign that. I mean, you're an attorney, you know the law, you read it and said, oh, I'll just sign this must be just fine. Did it have to do with your relationship with Mr. Dial? I don't know. I mean, you make a lot of other things form over time, so, another sweetheart deal on the way out the door.
Point of order, Mayor. Point of order, personal attack on the mayor.
Okay, now, go ahead, finish it.
No, that's all I gotta say. I mean, you're either gonna follow what the rules are or you're not.
You will, what y'all wanna do?
I put a form in there.
Well, not till we get a motion.
That's a new rule, that's never been there before, that, when did that happen, started?
When I went to ethics class.
Yeah, they had a little party, little shindig.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we would again refer this to our auditor and ask them for the legality of this document and whether or not we need to pursue it further.
The law firm. Motion, is there a second? Motion and a second, any further discussion? Ms. Ox, you call?
No, Mr.
Wait, we will have comments, okay. Mr. Warren first and then Mr. Little.
Mr. Mayor, one, I think that it is very wrong. You are the chair of this board, and the level of disrespect from your fellow council member is wrong. You never point an order to none of them when they do something, but you point an order to me, and the tone and the personal attacks and the sly comments that he's made against Mr. Dial, that he's made it toward you, you've done nothing. So I want the record to reflect this. And as a matter of fact, every ethics committee and every ethics meeting should tell you that the best thing to do is to do what your attorney tells you to do, because that's how you stay in the boundaries of safety. So you did nothing wrong, nor did the attorney do anything wrong. The problem is that some people has a personal agenda and an axe to grind. And that is the whole problem. And if you, Mr. Mayor, don't put a stop to some of these individuals, and some of these individuals get in their little feelings like women and go on what they're doing, they're gonna open up a can of worms against themselves. Because if y'all if they question you, I'm telling you right now, and if y'all question what the attorney did, I'm gonna question how we worked that Paul Dial contract out of the sunshine. I'm gonna talk about how we got Paul Dial hired. So if they don't rescind what they're doing right now to this man who has a hell of a reputation in this community, that law firm, and they don't do you right, Mr. Mayor, tonight, I'm telling you that when we launch an investigation, I'm gonna launch an investigation, and I got the records as to how we got to a Paul Dial. And I don't think none of y'all sitting up here that look like me want to discuss that with some people. I can promise you that. So back off the mayor, back off the city attorney. I can promise you that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see those documents.
No, back off. I'm telling you, back off, Mayor. I'm telling you, kill that motion. Kill that motion. I'm telling you, Jake, kill that motion. Kill that motion. I'm tired of y'all disrespecting Paul Dial. He's a friend of mine, and it ain't gonna happen, and it ain't right. He ain't here to defend himself. And Mayor, for you to tolerate this from your counterparts, you need to have more backbone toward them, not the citizens.
Okay. Mr. Lilker?
Thank you, Ron. Stu Local, Columbia County Observer. I just write stories. Mr. Dial wanted to be here to defend himself tonight. I suppose he could have, but he's not. So, I mean, that pretty much answers that question. I'm not gonna talk about what happened before. Pretty much set the reputation for the way Lake City is going. There's an old adage called Hornbook law, that after an illegal act, everything fails. What that means is that Mr. Jernigan, or anybody up there, Ms. Young, Mr. Johnson, can't walk into Citibank with a brown satchel, tell the teller to give them all their money, walk out and give it to the Salvation Army, and say everything's fine. Because I wanted to give it to charity, and that's the way I thought I'd get my money. The agreement that that's right, can't do that. Rob a bank, you go to jail. Whatever you guys do, nothing happens. But the government doesn't look kindly on people robbing banks. This board passed, on January 3rd, passed Mr. Dial's contract with a blank page. The blank page was left for the mayor's signature. A severance agreement, as Mr. Sampson said, and you all know, this is not new, has to be approved by the city council. Never mind what Mr. Kennan did, you all know that as a matter of fact. So I'm just asking you, what happens now? What happens to the reputation of Lake City? You already decided once, earlier this evening, that you can have an unapproved salary schedule and make payments on it, and Mr. Johnson is still stuck with some of those, going by something that's never been approved by the city council. Now, is that what you're gonna do again? Because Mr. Kennan's worried about an E&O claim? He's your attorney. And I gotta tell you, what you need to do is adjourn this meeting to another time, recess this meeting, until you find an attorney that can speak to defending the city about what's happened here tonight. You have an attorney sitting there, he's telling you, he's not giving you legal advice. I mean, that's what he just said, and I know Todd, I'm friendly with Todd, I like Todd, everybody likes Todd. But you got an attorney here saying, I'm not giving you legal advice. Well, how does this board sit in a $70 million budget, sitting here making legal decisions with an attorney that's not telling you he's giving you legal advice? That's pretty bizarre in my world, and it may be bizarre in your world. The fact of the matter is, Mayor Witt signed this without ever coming to the city council. And two wrongs don't make a right, two illegal acts don't make a right act, and I respectfully ask this city council needs to get an attorney before you make a decision on this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sampson?
Yes.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. Young?
Can you say the motion again?
Sure, yes, ma'am. It is a motion to refer to the auditor to see if we need to pursue this item further. And it's in reference to, investigation of severance pay of Mr. Dial.
Yes.
Mr. Jernigan?
No.
Mayor Witt?
All right, that's the last of the items, comments
What
and
was the vote?
It was 3-2, so the motion did carry. It was, Mr. Sampson voted yes, Mr. Hill voted yes, Ms. Young voted yes, and Mr. Jernigan and Mayor Witt, voted both no.
All right, comments, council?
Mayor, may we back up just a moment?
Sure.
What is the next step for that? I mean, do we need to come back with a resolution of hiring a firm, or are we doing that with the auditor?
James Moore is what I intended.
Okay. All right, Mayor.
All right, is there any comments or motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, anybody else have comments? Mr. Mayor, I know that y'all been reading in the news, we did the ethics training again. I was hoping the state at some point would revisit the Form 6 filing designation. I will not be filing a Form 6 form. I'm just letting you know now in advance. It's not gonna happen. It's way too intrusive. It asks for information on people that have no need to have their non-public, private information out there. So, I know the attorney gave us some information on that, so I'm reviewing it, but I'm not gonna fill that form out.
Any other comment?
When you don't fill the form out, I always wondered what would happen if you don't fill the form out. Do you have to resign from your position?
You gotta resign.
Mr. Mayor, can I say one more thing? I just want quickly.
Just very quick.
Very quickly. Form 6, Mr. Mayor, I did ask you to get with Ms. Sykes about me potentially running for mayor. I removed that concept. I'm not filling out that Form 6. It goes way too much into my personal life, my personal business, my personal finances. It goes into my blind trust if I got one. It goes too far, even to my dead grandma. I'm not doing that. So I refrain from even working out that deal.
I think the state, man, they made it hard. I don't know how you can sit up here because not only that, they changed the fine. So if you leave out one $1,000 asset, now let's say, and I've looked at how our county officials fill theirs out, they're all, if anybody files a claim, they're in trouble. Because if you have an FRS and you own $1,000 of a stock within that, that's gotta be disclosed separately. And I mean, I just talked about my account, I don't even know the time frame to do that is so ridiculous. And then, I know other people have it, if you do any kind of business that's 10% of your business, and if you have real estate holding companies and it's only a couple rentals, those people do 10%. They didn't sign up for their information to be disclosed. So the state, they took away control from the local government again, as they normally do, and said, we're not gonna allow the local government to self-govern. Instead, what we're gonna do is tell you that you can only have people who don't have certain things in there. So I'm not gonna do it.
Well, I saw the other day where the Form 6 requires me to do things that the Florida Bar forbids me to do as far as disclosure. And they're meeting in January to discuss that when they passed this thing last year without, that had to have came up. How many lawyers are in politics? So how they got to January without.
Attorneys are stepping out very rapidly because they have, I mean, you can't legally disclose, but you have to. So how are you gonna do it?
Hopefully resolve it. All right. Motion to adjourn. Okay, second. All in favor, say aye.
Democrat.